Thanks for having me. So what I hope I can do in a little bit of time is explain and show a bit to you about a technology-driven change that you may not have been thinking about, or either that you may not have thought about quite the way that maybe I can suggest it to you. Fundamentally, what I think is about to happen over the next few years, although I think there's going to be quite a bit of progress just in the next year, is that we're all going to start spending a lot of our time, not doing entertainment, a lot of our collective time in virtual reality. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is kind of why that is, and defend some of those ideas to you. But fundamentally, my company is High Fidelity. Our work is to get the software working to allow a billion, to allow everyone basically worldwide to be collectively together in virtual spaces. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Some of you probably recognize this or know what it is. This is my work. 20 years ago, I started a company, I can't believe it's almost 20 years, called Linden Lab and Second Life. And Second Life came on the market in 2003. This is a view of it, but it's a little neighborhood. It's a view of just a handful of the 20,000 or so servers that are currently used to simulate the world of Second Life. Taken together, that world today, those servers comprise a land area about the size of the Los Angeles basin, and it's populated by 1 million people. There's actually no less people than when you first heard about it. It didn't grow beyond 1 million people, but it also didn't shrink any. And so for the last 10 years or so, 15 now, those people have spent collectively about 400,000 human years in the world. They've spent about $5 billion on buying and selling goods and services from each other. And a lot of the things that they do, and that I got to watch them do over those years, have given me powerful insights and inspiration around what is going to happen to the real world as we begin to get these VR headsets. The things happening inside Second Life are very indicative of what we're likely to see very soon with VR, and different than what we've been thinking. So at High Fidelity, what we've been doing for the past 5 years is writing the beta version of a lot of software which will enable the sort of things that you saw and heard about people doing in Second Life to happen, but this time through the lens of the headsets, and in a manner architecturally designed to reach 1 billion people using it rather than 1 million. That's my work. Now, first let me talk about your vision of VR today. How many people here have played this game? That's awesome. This is a pretty advanced group. This is probably the best game in VR today. It's called Beat Saber. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. But thinking that VR is about video gaming is a mistake. You're making a mistake if you're seeing it that way. The enthusiasm of the Oculus Rift, the Oculus company founders, combined with the fact that the first generation devices are attached to a PC, they have to be plugged into a high-end PC, has led us to believe that the sort of launch market for VR, the important thing about it, even AR, will be something related to computer gaming, but in fact, it won't. The other reason and a suggestion as to where we're really going about this is to look at the fact that we are social creatures. We're mammals. And for those who have played Beat Saber, you probably know what I mean when I'm about to say this, which is putting a headset on you and making you lonely, putting you alone in a space populated only by computer graphics is unacceptable to humans. This is one of the great discoveries that we sort of collectively made as the VR industry. That is to say, it's what's made the VR industry not take off so far, is the fact that we're putting people in lonely, single-player experiences. Human beings don't do that. Thinking about VR as a gaming technology is incorrect, because fundamentally what it delivers isn't gaming or entertainment or even any kind of experience. It delivers connection and communication. The big tech disruptors, the last three, have been the browser, the smartphone, and now about that to be the headset. Fundamentally, all disruptive technologies have influenced our ability to communicate with each other. That's what they're fundamentally about, and so is VR, and again, so it's not about gaming. More specifically, and of course that's a video of this happening in High Fidelity, More specifically, what VR is going to enable us to do is to, in the blink of an eye, put you across the world, face to face, shaking hands, talking to, using your normal voice, your facial expressions, your hand motions, with another person, without any regard for the distance separating you. And in fact, the advances in VR technology will increasingly be to create more and more correctness and intimacy and detail in that experience. That's Peter Diamandis from XPRIZE and I, all kitted out in these body tracking sensors. You can kind of see one on Peter's chest right there. But that enabled us to walk up to each other and give each other a hug in the virtual world. Another key element, which I'll touch on later, is scale. But in addition to bringing, two people together across the world, you got to be able to bring a lot of people together, because if we're going to move this conference, for example, fully into VR, we need to have capacity for 250 people in the same space at one time. And we've also been working on delivering that, and that's me crowd surfing at an event where there's 300 people. What I'm going to show you next is bringing this all together as a single use case that'll hopefully inspire you in this sort of non-gaming direction. This is pretty amazing. This is a teacher, I'll play the video, but this is a teacher who is taking first a group of adults and then a group of students together into a tomb, the tomb of Nefertari, in Cairo. The teacher and the students are in San Francisco together. The Egyptologist is in Los Angeles. So let me see if I can play that. You might need to click on that. Thank you.
Today I'm going to take a group through a virtual tour of Queen Nefertari's tomb in high fidelity VR. And I'm down in LA, but all of these folks are out in other parts of California, around the country, and even around the world. So we are all going to meet in this virtual environment, and I'm going to teach them a little bit about Egyptian culture, Egyptian art, history, and even a little bit about mythology. As we pass through this corridor, we're kind of entering as a gateway into the world of the dead. VR offers a new way of learning. Most people can't travel to some of these locations or go to some of these sites, but with VR, it can feel like they're actually there and they get an experience that feels really authentic. So as an educator, this offers me more tools to help them better understand the past. I want to look at the ceiling.
Stars.
The sky is very reminiscent of the sun god Ra's journey. I've had a lot of people come through the tour so far, and their ages have really varied. The younger kids were definitely the most responsive. They were very eager.
Nefertari is the queen that was here, right?
Yep, and she was the wife of Ramses the Great. She was his queen. They were very engaged. I mean, they were raising their hands super high, trying to answer every question or tell me something that they have learned about. Who knows anything about mummies?
I do.
I always try to encourage them to go beyond just this experience that we've had. And hopefully an experience like this will plant a seed of curiosity. So when they go out beyond the experience, they'll be inspired to do some research of their own or try to answer their own questions. And as an educator, that's what we always really hope people will take away with them. I want to thank you all so much for coming on this tour today.
Thank you so much. That was really cool.
Thank
you.
Whew. That was fun.
So, give me the next slide there. There we go. So, what you saw there is live today. It works. I mean, there's a $400 headset coming out on the market in the end of Q1 from Oculus, and two other amazing devices that are on the market today that are inexpensive devices that you can put on the head of a teacher and students anywhere in the world and bring them together like that. The education market worldwide is $6 trillion. And I think that many, many kids in the next couple of years are going to start wearing these things to go to school. And if you're wearing these headsets to go to school, you're going to wander around outside the school and see what else there is to do, or put them on as an adult and become entertained, go to music experiences. This is another thing we're working on. Music and entertainment are $2 trillion industries. I'm sort of sizing the impact for you here. E-commerce, obviously, wandering around and shopping, you'll do as well. That industry is $3 trillion. And taken together, if you think about going to Cairo in a headset, more broadly, what we're talking about is essentially replacing a lot of reasons for which we travel today. Indeed, perhaps the only reason we'll ultimately travel is to touch someone, because touch is the one sense, by the way, that we really can't replicate in the headset. I'm a physics guy, and I'll tell you that you may hear crazy ideas about how to kind of get into the brain, but we're not even close to there yet. But nevertheless, travel itself is an $8 trillion industry. So it's certainly not all about gaming. The industries that will be really affected by all this are hundreds of times larger. Fundamentally, VR is a disruptor, the same way the browser and the smartphone was. And as a disruptor, it'll probably be taken up at a similar rate. That's the smartphone there. It basically went to billions, reached a billion people or so, several billion now, in about 7 years. And so I think given that the price point for these new VR headsets is roughly the same, it's very possible that we're going to see that kind of movement happen. Again, first generation headsets are misleading. There are some of them here, I'm sure. They're great, but they're experimental because they're tied to PCs. But here are pictures of these devices that I mentioned that are coming out. They're pretty amazing. And beyond the second generation devices, the AR devices and third generation headsets are going to continue pushing forward from manufacturers. You're going to have them soon. The reason for that is that there's fundamentally a contest going on here to create the next screen. We need to go beyond the small screen on the smartphone because our eyes can't see any more pixels on them. And so we're going to build these new screens inevitably. And what that means is that all the stuff we're going to first do in VR, like going to school, like I just showed you, we'll ultimately be able to do on these AR screens as well. And these things are going to come to market. There's 3 companies are building: Apple, Oculus, Magic Leap, all building these AR-style devices. I touched on scale a little bit. The fundamental life-affirming, world-improving aspects of VR become more apparent, experimentally at least, when you have a lot of scale. And I'll show you this one little brief video, but mostly I actually want you to listen to this video. This is an overview of the same scene where we reached 423 people in one space, but I want to show you what that sounded like to be in the audience. So just click that one for me there and bring the audio up.
Is everybody ready? Yeah!
I love you. Hey guys.
So, in that scene, we had 423 people. I was crowd surfing. You saw that picture. I was jumping on everybody because you can. In our world, it does actually work. That is to say, I walked on their heads and then fell down between them. But after it was done, I went and I walked around the room, and we had people from all over the world. We had people from Israel. We had people from South America. We had people from East Asia. We had people from Russia. I ran into a group of people that had met online, I think in another virtual world. They were from the Ukraine, Belarus, and somewhere near Moscow. And they were hanging out together in full headsets and gear. And they were standing in a corner of this experience. Now, if you imagine, being able to... It actually worked that time, didn't it? Let's go to the next slide. So, I mean, if you imagine being able to get that diverse a group of people to a lecture or a music event or an experience and get them all talking to each other at the same time, imagine what's going to happen. Think what that does for political debate, right? That 400 people could have been debating politics in a way that would let everybody have an even, fair voice, come to the thing from all over the world and not kill each other, because they're in headsets and they can't. I mean, that's a pretty unbelievable thing. This is me with Dr. Courtney Cogburn, who is an academic who studies race and is using VR to study it. And she's on stage in front of 100 people, again, from all over the world, who are able to ask her questions about this. Additionally, the impact of VR on people is surprising, and again, Second Life gives us a lot of information about this. Strangely enough, people here probably kind of get this, but strangely enough, having an avatar, being a digital person, is actually a net improvement in almost every case to your life. The reason for this, oddly and delightfully enough, is that the avatar serves as an aspirational target for you. You do things with your virtual identity that are things you want to do with your own. And so it essentially kind of pulls you along like a carrot, almost literally in front of you in the case of Second Life as you walk around. And so there have been many, many academic studies, and of course, you know, a wealth of anecdotes, and I imagine there are many people here that have tried Second Life and know what I mean, that show that the impact of becoming digital as a human body, is actually, even without counting, you know, being able to come to a political debate, a net positive for you. So this is really, again, something that I kind of beg you to think about. And so kind of summarizing it, and just speaking to the possibility here, as people put these headsets on and build classrooms, and build music halls, and build applications, they will probably work together in much the same way that we saw with Second Life to create connected spaces. You're going to want to walk from one experience into another in some sense. And so if you kind of scale this up the way we saw Second Life scale up, I predict that in the next 10 years or so, you're going to see 1 billion people using VR. They're going to be on 50 or 100 million servers. By the way, that means no one company is going to host this all, not even ours. Our architecture allows you to run your own servers. If we're going to put on that many servers, if we're going to create a space that's of global scale, it's going to be a human undertaking that's far greater than any one company. Our hope is to provide the software to enable that, but like the web, it's not going to be us running it. It's going to have $1 trillion economy. Again, that's just kind of scaling up Second Life, but I can defend in a lot of detail that I think that's probably about right. And we're going to do everything, almost everything we do in the real world, we're going to do there. And I think, you know, just visually, this is an image from Grand Theft Auto, unfortunately, but this, which has many beautiful aspects to it as well. But what it shows you, though, is the possibility of the idea that this place, there will be a placeness to this thing that we're going to create together. And we're all going to find ourselves spending a great deal of time in there. Now, I was at a conference yesterday where we spent the whole time talking about the downsides of this. And I'm not going to do that here, but you can imagine that there are many risks and downsides to building something at this scale. You know, how will identity and reputation and the economy and, you know, equal rights, avatars' rights work in a world of this scale, which begins to consume so much of our time and energy? And I think that is a very worthy subject for consideration. We have to also together build this world as it emerges in a way that makes it collectively fair and a benefit for all of us. So that's about it. Thank you. I'll stop there.